welcome. Um, welcome to the chat. How's everything, buddy, going? Listen, as you guys know, Salt Lake City is about to ramp up in another week or two. What does that have to do with us, you may ask? I will tell you. Listen, we've been looking a little bit into Jen Shah. I do have an attorney with me because I know you guys love getting facts, verifiable facts. We have an attorney with us, Just Johnda. She has a great podcast. You can find her on YouTube. Not well, she does have a YouTube, but you can find her on Instagram. You can find her on Facebook. She's going to come on in a few minutes. But what we want to talk about is the Jen Shah case. There's been a lot going on with the Jen Shah case. A lot of people are saying she is guilty. Throw the book at her, all this stuff. And hey, Mickey, what's going on, Mama? Hey, Amira, what's going on? Amira Lewis and Mickey Russell. Listen, a lot of people saying she is guilty, and we need to throw the book at her. However, I've looked into the court documents. Our friendly neighborhood lawyer, Just Johnda, has looked into the court documents, and we're going to hash out what we think the positions actually should be. But also, we want to do a deep dive in the case before Bravo gets a law around and starts telling their side of the story, which is all just pure hype and for the ratings. But don't worry, guys, this is going to be more entertaining than Bravo because you saw the way they dropped the ball on Erica Girardi. So just to let you know off the bat, full disclosure, I do not think that Jen Shah needs to be mentioned in the same breath as Erica Girardi. And I got to be honest with you, I really honestly do think that the government literally, once again, maybe overstepped their bounds. Let's say hi to Judge of Justice. What's up, girl? Hey, Star Jones, right? Amara said, child, that chick is so guilty. Magdalena Lewis, hello. Okay, so listen, let's bring in our special guest, Just Johnda. She is a very esteemed attorney. You will see she is articulate, she is well thought out, and more than anything, she knows her stuff. So also at the end of it, we'll have a question and answer. If Johnda's comfortable, you guys can come in and ask her questions, give your opinion, or we can just do it from the screen. All right. So let's go. Hi, Miss Johnda. How are you? How are you doing?
Hello, Miss Tisa. I'm so excited to
Hi.
be here.
It's so lovely to have you. Let's just say hi to a few people. Hey, Jewel Adams. Hey, Jess Kell. What's going on? And you said, and Amari said, I hope they did because I was rooting for her crazy ass. We were all rooting for her. We thought it was a Tyra Banks thing when we're like, we were rooting for you. We were all rooting for
I
you.
know, right?
Exactly. So hold on one second. We're just going to say hi to a few more people. Hold on one second. Sending out a few things. Hold on. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so hey Miora, what's going on? Hey Kenny, what's going on? Hey Cam, what's going on? So let's get into this. We'll wait for a few more people to come into the chat stream. But if you guys are joining us, we are talking about Miss Jen Shah. What has been going on? You know that the government is accusing her of doing everything, including the fall of the Roman Empire. And they say she is going down. In true Fed style, they dog walked her out. Because, that's one thing I realized about the U.S. attorneys. They love making a spectacle of things, right? So they
Oh,
waited.
yes.
Yes, they waited until the most opportune moment because if you guys don't know, cases like this can make a U.S. attorney's career. If they leave the U.S. attorneys, they can go on to become an AG or a DA or anything in this election because the name actually increases, even on the state level. A lot of times
Or
when
just big money law firms. Let's face it.
exactly,
I
or
mean, you
hey,
want to
Brew,
you want to get into a white shoe law firm and you've got the big money, then there you go, especially on the federal level, because these are federal cases and not everybody does it. So if you are in a place like the Southern District of New York, which is the best of the best of the best, and a big case that everybody knows about, and you win it, the sky's the limit.
the sky is the limit. Okay, so This much is true. So, since you are a resident attorney friend, right? Why
Hmm.
don't you actually take us through the particulars of the case? And then we're going to go into their one by one because I've actually read through it a little bit. And just to let you guys know, Johnda is saying that Jen Shah is going down, right? Um,
Yes, that's
I
my opinion.
believe I believe that if she has enough money and if she has enough money and if she has enough money and she has enough patience, I think she can actually beat this because I looked through her defenses and they were actually pretty good. So, Jonna, why don't you take us through the case? What the government is alleging. Of course, this is for information, so we're going to make this
Yeah,
as entertaining as possible. That's why we got Jonna because a lot of lawyers, it's like watching paint dry, but she really
yes.
makes it come alive. So, why don't you take us through the case really quick, bring everybody up to speed for what the government is alleging, and then we can actually break through how Jen might beat this, right?
Okay, and just so that you all know that what Tisa didn't mention, aside from me being a lawyer, is that I love all things reality TV, from the trashy to the benign. I love it, and I've been a Bravo file from day one. So I get into the legal stuff, but I love the mess like everybody else. And I think one of the things that is most telling about this case is one of the first sentences that the AG says in their initial filing, which is Shah and Smith, that's Stewart, flaunted their lavish lifestyle to the public as a symbol of their success. In reality, they allegedly built their opulent lifestyle at the expense of vulnerable, often elderly, working class people. When you have an AG saying something like that, that means that they are not just watching what you may have done in this supposed scheme, right? That means they're doing the same thing we're doing. They're watching the show and they're forming opinions about this person based on the show. So that already tells you the mindset they're going in with. It's already like, so so now to the scheme, because this gets a little messy. I'll tell you what Jen, if and you tell me if this is what you're looking for. I'll tell you what Jen is charged with, and then kind of make it fit with the rest of the scheme. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's go really quickly through what Jen is charged with.
Okay.
Then let's go into her defensive because I feel like if we go into what Jen's charged with, then we go into her defenses, it'll be much easier for you to put meat on the bones and talk
With
about
the scheme.
how it actually aligns with the overall scheme or the alleged scheme.
The
Okay.
alleged scheme.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so Jen Shaw, along with, and this, her charges came along with her assistant friend Stu Chains. Remember Stu Chains on the skates? So Jen Shaw, along with Stuart Smith, were charged on March 29th of this past year with three counts. One, telemarketing fraud. Two, money laundering. And then the third one isn't necessarily a charge, it's an enhancement. The third piece is an enhancement because the primary victims, alleged victims of the fraudulent scheme, were mostly part of vulnerable populations. And under the law, vulnerable populations are considered anybody under 18, anybody with a mental or physical handicap, or 55 and older. In this case, 55 and older, the targets were seniors. It kind of makes you think back to, like, the 2000s and the late 90s, where everybody was getting in trouble
Mhm.
because they were sending all, remember, everybody was sending these magazine things to seniors, those reverse mortgages and all of that. And so the government put things in place because they know seniors are targets. I see Kenny said the AG is a Real Housewives fan. Apparently so. so, so That's what she's charged with. Now, these are pretty serious charges. They're on the federal level. And the reason they're on the federal level is because anytime things go beyond your own state, and it doesn't matter what it is, just you driving to another state, if it's drugs, whatever the case may be, so it ends up being federal. Typically, anything that involves the internet or telephones is going to end up being federal because.
And in this case, just to bring you guys up to speed, it's literally federal because there's wire fraud, which means money came in
Yes,
from state lines, and then it can stay in the state. Not saying state is better or worse than federal, depending.
kind of is.
I don't know, because if you go to state jail, I mean,
Oh no,
Oz wasn't
it's a
based on
horrible
federal
place to
prison.
be.
Yes, Oz was not based on a federal prison. That was state prison. There's a reason why they
Absolutely.
call it Club Fed. If you want to have to do the time, you'll want to do federal time or no time at all. But there was wire fraud. Wire fraud could be me sending you $1 Western Union. It could be me charging a penny on my credit card. It could just be anything from different states where they send money to or from. Also, when she gets into customers, right? If a customer from California orders something
Hmm.
from Montana, I mean, where are they? Salt Lake City,
Yeah.
boom, all of a sudden. So it's anything that crosses state lines or has to do with a citizen, even if they're both citizens of the state, if
Yes.
they're in a different state at that time. This could even be when you're co-conspirator. And we'll get into that. So that's what they're trying to talk about when they're saying, now, you guys, I'm already going to start my defense of Jen Shah. A lot of times the government uses really big words to scare the
Yes.
Jesus out of people. They're like, oh, it was wire fraud. It was this. It was conspiracy. Or literally, me and Johnda could be like, yo, do you think you want to get like a drink at 8 o'clock? And then after we get the drink, maybe go by my cousin's house. She owes me money. I want to get the money. And you say, yeah, okay, I'll take you, right? Now we have conspiracy to go get a drink, right? And you're like,
Hmm.
I'll take you. And then she texts
We've
me
got the
and it's like,
agreement.
hey, but you need to act in furtherance. So we
Yep.
already have the scheme. Let's go for a drink at 8 and let's stop by my cousin's house to pick up the money she owes me. Now, you need an overt act and furtherance in federal court, right? Federal rules
Well,
of
even in
procedure.
state courts, you need that act in furtherance for that
Well, but not
conspiracy.
every state court. Some state
Hmm.
courts don't rely on an overt act, just agreeing to the conspiracy. But federal
Hmm.
rules of procedure, you need the overt act. So what would the
Hmm.
overt act be? John texting me and being like, hey, we still on for 8, right? Whether I say yes or no, right? It is an overt act. So the federal government will throw all these charges and everything against the wall. And to common people, it's like, oh my God, what did she do? But at the end of the day, they're literally doing a fishing expedition. So just because you hear wire fraud, granted, we don't know how much she defrauded. It's not alleged to be on Erica Girardi level. Is it? Do you know the
It's
exact
it's
amount?
it's several million. It is not. No, we're not in the 200 million scale. It is,
Mhm.
but there is several million.
Okay.
Hear the echo? Is that me or you?
What's that?
I heard a bit of an echo. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. No problem.
Okay.
Hi, Aaliyah TV, and to everybody else in the comments, just so you guys don't get this twisted, this is my show. Please save your feedback for how I run my show. You are welcome to do what you want on your channel, but on my channel, I don't want to see this in the chat or I'll have my moderators remove you. Okay, Pumpkin? All right, everyone, let's go on. All right, so let's go. All right, to that point, this
Hmm.
is why I actually think that already I smelled it and I'm like, this sounds like trumped up charges. Okay.
Hmm.
So, what are the actual charges she's charged with?
Okay, well, and this is what I'm going to do is break down the charges because those are the charges, but it makes more sense if you talk about what they claim she did. So, as it relates to the
Okay,
telemarketing,
hold on one second. Let
okay,
me, and 1 second. There we go. Let's go.
okay,
All right.
as
Yes.
it relates to the telemarketing scheme, there is an alleged scheme that involves other people, and we're getting, like we said, we'll get into that in a bit because, like we talked about before, it makes more sense when we start talking about sentencing and all that. But there is an alleged scheme that involved the telemarketing, which is really funny because remember at the reunion when somebody asked her what she did, and she
Mm-hmm.
started talking about algorithms and all kinds of stuff, and everybody was like, "Huh?" You know? So that's basically what you remember that. Okay, so basically what happened is there is a group and they ran what are called sales floors. And what they were allegedly selling were these business service plans for an online business. Now,
Mhm.
what makes it, I hate to use the word great, but let's say in the criminal mind, what
What makes it inspired? What
for
made
the,
it
yes, there
inspired?
you go. What made it
Inspired.
inspired for the criminals is to pick on a population who is not as adept as the online stuff, right? So
Okay.
you're not going to go after people in their 20s and 30s. They'll be like, "Oh, please." You go after seniors because it is what it is, right? With the whole internet thing. So
Hmm.
they allegedly sold them these services, and it was a situation where they would get it, but they would need additional things in order to make the services work. So then you get a call back. Do you want to buy the tax service to make it work? You want to buy this class, whatever. Before you know it, your credit card's maxed out and you have no recourse. Well, what Jen and Stu are charged with in the scheme is that they generated the list of names that they then provided to the sales floor. So now you see where we got the tentacles reaching out to the different places. They provided the names to the sales floor. So I'd give that information to you. Then you would get your people to make those phone calls. Once we start generating money, what are you going to do? Of course, you're going to kick some money back to me because I gave you those names.
Okay.
So that was kind of the circle jerk that was allegedly going on. Now, so it's clear what the alleged telemarketing fraud is because it's the scheme of selling the stuff and being a part of that. The money laundering piece comes in. Where does money laundering come in? You got to hide the dirty cash. Excuse me, you got to hide the dirty cash. So there's allegations of accounts being set up in other places. And guys, it's so funny how much a lot of this mirrors TV. The more sophisticated people get, the more television shows get. It's just like what you see on TV. They get these foreign bank accounts and all of this stuff going on. So that's where the money fraud comes in. And then, as I said, the enhancement is simple. Who are the alleged victims? Oh, they're allegedly over 55. There's your enhancement. The money
Okay.
laundering piece carries up to 20 years, the enhancement up to 10 years,
Mm.
and the wire fraud carries up to 20, the enhancement 5 to 10, and the telemarketing, the money laundering piece up to 10. So we're talking about 30 to 40 years. It is that going to happen? No, but you get the range.
Okay, so you say they get the range. The thing is, and this is what piqued my interest, why I asked you on Jen Shah. I think everybody has pleaded out, right? Except
Not everybody, but a good
who?
amount of people. I would say
Okay,
about, from what I sent you, I think we're batting about 60% at this point have pleaded out.
60%. But I think
Yeah.
everybody at the top level has pleaded
Except for
out.
her and Stu, yeah. Either
Yes,
they pled
except
or been convicted in some way.
okay, except for her and Stu. Now, here's the thing. Now, let's get into Jen Shaw's defenses, right?
Hmm.
Because Jen Shaw's attorney is arguing that right now the government's pleading is not sufficient under the federal rules of procedures or the Fifth Amendment, right?
Hmm.
Basically, and I'm just going to speak in layman terms. Anybody that knows legal jargon, fine, it's going to be long winded, but
Hmm.
let's do layman's terms, right? It's basically saying that the government as not specifically stating the crimes that are alleged. And more importantly, they're not giving the particulars, which is the reasons they're saying. So a bill of particulars is saying, listen, Jonda, I think you did A, B, and C because
Hmm.
C, D, E. And C,
Yeah.
D, and E proves you did A, B, and C. That's a bill of particulars,
On the
right?
civil side, that's what they call it. But yes, there is a similarity on the criminal side, just different names, but same difference. Yeah.
Okay, well, with the federal, they're arguing that they want a bill of procedures, right?
Mhm.
They're saying that what the government has alleged, right, the charges they have filed, they're vague. And because they've indicted so many people, Jen Shaw's actual defense is what that got to do with me? That's literally what her defense is, right? Um, they didn't want to commit to a certain set of facts. The Jen Shaw is saying they need more information and that they have not given anything particular about her actions, not the fact of this whole scheme, but they
Mhm.
haven't given anything particular about her actions that would tie her to this criminal set. Aside of saying, and they really, I looked through what the government played. You played a role between 2012 and 2021,
Mhm.
and she's like, okay, what's the role? Now, here's the thing, right? Let's start with
They
conspiracy.
did particularize it though. That was Jen's people's initial pleading. The judge has already ruled on it.
The
The
judge
judge,
has, okay, so
he
what did the
al-
judge rule in the particulars?
the judge already ruled when her people tried to bring in saying that the case should be thrown out because it was not pled with, well, they pled everything but the kitchen sink, first of all, which you're supposed to do. Now,
You are.
and by the way, I know that just in case to help a little bit, I know that on this in this situation, because of my opinion, it looks like, I'm, a pro prosecution. My job for the past 20 years has been as a defense attorney, but a good defense attorney has to play you've got to play devil's advocate with yourself to make sure that you're putting forth the best defense for your client. So, and in this case, I don't have to do it, so I can do that. So at any rate, that her attorneys who did their job, I mean, God bless them,
Mm-hmm.
their initial, yeah, because you read it, their initial pleadings were exactly what anybody would say. um they said that she wasn't read Miranda. I mean, they did the whole defense attorney playbook. And one of the most important ones, of course, is that you are not pleading with specificity, that my client can't mount a proper defense because she doesn't know what the hell she's charged with. Absolutely.
And
And
let's also just say that when they say that you have not mounted a proper defense, there's two sides to
or
that.
that
The
they
reason,
can't.
yeah, well, even outside of a proper defense, and I want everybody to know if you're ever in trouble with the law, God forbid. One, you
Mhm.
want to be able, like Jonda pointed out, as attorney at law, Jonda, you want to be able to mount a defense, but also you want them to be particular because when it comes to conspiracy and when it comes to overt matters, right? Even if you pled out and say, okay, everything you say I did between 2012 and 2021, I did, if there's no particularity, the government could go dig some more and be like, we have another crime that you kind of admitted to in court that took place in 2009. So now we're going to prosecute you for 2009. It literally is a way of saying, listen, everything you have on me, lay it on the table now because I'm not going to be fighting you in court for the rest of my life about things that you should have already told me. So that's another reason why they want it particular. So what did the judge rule in the pleading for particulars?
Okay, so basically, well, what they did is they wanted it dismissed. Their defense wasn't even saying, well, give us this or that. They're saying if it's not specific, if you haven't alleged a real case against my client, then toss it. So the judge, yeah, so they actually did a motion to dismiss. That's why it gave us, for our nosy purposes, it gave us a lot of information, right? Remember, it gave you a lot of
Yeah.
information because when you're pleading that stuff, like the fact that you're saying she was questioned without counsel and all of that, that was also cool for us because we're nosy, and it was giving us some more insight into everything that allegedly happened from that infamous pickup at the van.
Okay.
So
So how about
anyway,
this? Let
uh,
me read what her defenses were, and then
yeah,
you can tell us a little bit about what your opinion is of it, or whether the
or
judge,
even
and
what
you
the
can tell
judge
us the
said.
judge's ruling if he did
Absolutely.
rule on that. Okay, so the first one was conspiracy to commit wire fraud, right? Now,
Mhm.
to me, they make a few interesting and compelling defenses, right? They say that in those pleadings, I'm sorry, in the pleadings, in the papers, they don't even say whether Jen herself even made those claims. They said these people made the claims. And Jim was like, if I'm involved in this
Tell
conspiracy,
me
and
what I did.
what's that?
No, you're
Yes,
right.
tell me
Tell
what
me
I
what
did.
I did.
And she said that one of the reasons why they couldn't actually name Jen in some of this stuff is because Jen, years before, had been removed from those companies. So even though, let's just say, for example, in 2020, they say company A did this. Jen Shaw was like, I was removed from that company in 2014. So again, what does it have to do with me, right? Her attorneys even said that she didn't even know about some of the things that were going on because she was removed from the company, right? And they said because her being completely removed from the company, from any involvement, from even promoting about it, then how do you even get the overt act in conspiracy when at the end of the day, if you do agree to a conspiracy, you have to know what you're agreeing to.
Mhm.
Now, what do you think about we're going to get to all of them, but in her defense for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, what do you think of those defenses? And let us know if the judge has ruled on that yet.
Yes. Well, the judge ruled as it related to them wanting it dismissed on those grounds.
Okay.
The judge ruled that the case was going to move forward and not be dismissed because that's basically what you're asking for when you do that. Now, what I will tell you is, in this kind of it's a great defense. They also had a good offense for it. So, and this will help tie it together for everybody as well. The initial charges or the initial indictment against Jen and Stu Chains, I just like calling them that, was was put together in November of 2019. Now notice it was not filed until, or it was not served on them until March 29th, 2021. So in November 2019, you're right. And her attorneys are right, especially since the face of the indictment that they were given was just an unsealed version of 2019. Well, between 2019 and 2021, there's a key reason as to why that wasn't served. And a key reason was that they were taking this down like dominoes, starting with one group, getting that group to flip on the next group, and getting that group to flip on the next group. So between 2019 and 2021, the individuals who allegedly had direct contact with Jen and Stu Chains, which would be the people running the sales floors in
Mhm.
Manhattan and New Jersey. Again, you see that out of state stuff for those of you who've been hanging with us. Um, those individuals were arrested. Their indictments were not sealed. They were arrested in 2019. So what do we think happened between 2019 and 2021? They filled in the blanks about Jen and Stu Chains for those 2 years, saying this is what happened, this is what happened. Listen to us make phone calls, watch us get more information from them. All of that was going on. So then when the government, that's why I was smiling the whole time when you were talking, because then when the government finally serves them with their subpoenas and we get the action we're going to see on Sunday in March of 2021, they've got the information now. As far as they're concerned, we've got the gotcha. We have all of that behind the scenes information. We have the specifics. And so that is what the government argued against that motion. They're saying, yes, the original indictment did not break it down. However, here is an interceding indictment that now breaks all of that down. So they were smart not to serve it then, because her people could have won that motion then.
Mm. Now, somebody said a good point, and these are great points you're making. I believe it was Chi said that the feds have a 95% conviction rate. However, I do want everybody to know that one of the reasons the feds have a 95% conviction rate is because the feds basically have an unlimited amount of money. And if you are on if you are on trial, people tend to believe law enforcement. They tend to believe the feds. Also, because feds do have an unlimited amount of money and they usually bury people in procedure and whatnot, there sometimes is a tendency that people do roll over when they can fight it because it's not worth it. It usually doesn't go their way. But you guys, don't be confused because most of the federal crimes
But
are
there's
settled
another
out.
very important reason, though. There
Why
is
is
one more. There is one more very important reason. Is that you're right? Unlimited resources, not just unlimited resources, the best of the best in terms of the attorneys, but that most important reason is they don't care if they take 10 years to put a
yeah,
case against you together.
they don't. And the thing is,
Yeah.
even if like that's a weird thing. Even if they put it takes 10 years, the world we live in, people usually believe law enforcement. If
Mhm.
a cop, if
And
a
they give
judge,
up.
if somebody stands there and says you did this, most people say, well, why? We still have this thing in our mind, even for people that, and this is very important to say, even for people where we know that people are just grabbed and sometimes there's nothing behind it, it's still automatically because we've been indoctrinated, you must be guilty or why would they be bothering you, you know? Now, granted, we're not saying this is Jen Shah's case, but this, she was trying to play into that. And this is why, to Jonda's point, she got really, really good attorneys. If you don't have an attorney throwing the kitchen sink to throw a smoke screen, almost like
You
the way
have
Dave
to.
Chappelle, when he was the president and he knocked over water and flipped the table and he ran. If you do not have an attorney doing that to you for defense, I don't know what you're paying that person for, because you can
Mhm.
go and be convicted under that 95% rate all by yourself, you know?
To
Now,
talk about one of your besties, you better go in there windmilling like Portia
like, like,
with a boom mic.
I want people saying, do we know for certain her name is Jonda? No, you misspelled it. We don't know her exact name. What's her
I
given
don't know
name?
her.
So that's what you want to do. Now, here's the thing. Let's get into a few other things because I see what your point is, and this does all wrap around, right? This does all wrap around. But when it gets to that, right? Jen's defense also, and tells if the judge has ruled on this particular,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
She
I love
said
to keep
that
doing it this way. I think this gets all of the stuff out. This is good.
yeah, so she says their defense was, listen, this isn't lies, just mere sales puffery. Now, if you guys don't know, right, there were a lot of cases, and I'm just bringing you guys up to speed, right? So bear with me.
Mhm.
If you guys already know this, great. Go ahead into the chat and teach the rest of the class, but I'm going to go over it. There is a thing that usually when you make some type of claim, it needs to be true, especially if this claim is why I'm buying it, right? However, salesmen are under a little bit different. They cannot outright lie, but because you are looking to them as an authority, there needs to be a gain of truth. But then the salespeople said, and this is all old law, but then how are we going to make money? Because if I come and you ask me, is this the best? What am I supposed to say? Well, it might be, maybe, it could, in relation. So the salespeople said, you know what we got to do? We need to have a little wiggle room. They call that
Mhm.
puffery. And it's been common knowledge, at least in American society, that you can't trust the salesperson 100% because they're not actually telling you the whole truth. They're not lying, but they're not telling you the truth. Now, where does
Mhm.
this come in with Miss Jen Shah? Miss Jen Shah says, listen, even in the businesses I was involved in, and they're not all the businesses you say that they were, right? Anything I said was just plain puffery, right? It's like I wasn't saying that you will become the next Jeff Bezos.
Mhm.
I'm saying you could become the next Bezos, right? Now here's the thing. You guys might be like, okay, well, that's not that sounds illegal. But actually, what
No,
Jen
it
Shaw
isn't.
is doing, no, it's not. But what Jen Shaw is doing is arguing that her business she was in is actually more to an MLM. And I know you have information on this, Jonda, than
Mhm.
what the feds are alleging. MLM, very shady things. It's literally right on the line of legal, not illegal. But Jen Shaw was saying, what I did is nothing more than what any MLM does. And if MLMs are legal, then my stuff should be legal, right? And so these charges are too vague and they should be dismissed. Let us know what you know about the MLM portion. What do you think about this defense? And I believe we were talking offline. If you want to sprinkle in a little bit about, I think Miss Whitney is also involved in the MLM that is
Yes.
maybe facing criminal charges as well. But why don't you fill us in on this one?
Well, you're right. MLMs always have to be careful with it with that line between what makes you a multi-level marketing company versus what makes you a pyramid scheme. And the bright line that the government has drawn, and if you watch things like the Lula Rich documentary, and there's another one that's really good on Netflix that is based around Herbalife that really explain this probably much better than I'm about to. But the but the bright line that the government draws is that the money that the salespeople have the potential to make is primarily, or in the most part, it's definitely got to be more than 50% from their sales of whatever the product is, as opposed to bringing people in.
Mm,
If the only true way that someone makes money in what is supposed to be a multi-level marketing scheme is really just bringing in these downlines, then that is going to be considered an illegal pyramid scheme.
mhm.
Now, I don't think that that's a bad argument to make, but that's a risky argument, right? Because on the one hand, if you got to throw the kitchen sink at it. If you're saying that I am selling something that just flat out doesn't exist and nobody has a snowball's chance in hell of making money off of it, then I've got to reach for something, because for all intents and purposes, that's what they're saying about this stuff that Jen Shah and company were selling. So of course, you've got to reach for something. So the next best thing to possibly reach for would be to say, no, we're an MLM. So people have the opportunity to make money, but what do they always tell you in an MLM? You have to put work into it in order to make money. You can't just sit back and expect the money to come to you just because you bought into Avon or what have you. You got to actually knock on some doors.
So, just
So,
to interject to this MLM defense that you're doing a great job of breaking down, one of the reasons that they said this should be looked at more as an MLM, and again, like you said, it's very risky, is because they said that people actually made money. So how can this be a fraud case?
mhm,
See, the thing is with a fraud case, and again, tell me what you think of the chances of this working. I thought it was a brilliant defense, but you are more defense. You're in criminal, you would know.
mhm,
But you're saying this is fraud. The government's alleging no one made money. And they're
mhm.
saying, we know for a fact people made money.
Well, in most, and if you look at some of the particularly the illegal pyramid scheme cases, you're always going to find somebody that makes money, right? It really is about what is the likelihood of people making money without continuing to have to reinvest and get all of these services. If there is a couple of people who break through here or there and can actually make some change, then of course. And honestly, that's sort of the way that you keep it going. You can't have nobody ever make money ever, or you're not going to get away with it, right? So you got to have a little. I love that shamazing.
Macy said, so she's only guilty of being shamazing.
That's exactly it. So, so you've got to have somebody make a little money, right? Even with the best lie, you got to put a little bit of truth in there. So yes, there may be a couple of people who made money. What the government is going to say, and after all these years of investigating and everybody and their mama pleading guilty, they're going to say is okay, you had a couple, you had 5 people make money. You got 500 broke mofos over here. So that,
But you can not, but here's the thing about Jen Shah and the thing with the government that I was just like, y'all, because honestly, we can say that about 80% of the public and private universities in the US. How many
yes,
people that still owe student loans and will owe student loans till they're 80? You got 500, in your words, broke mofos over there, and you maybe got 10 or 20 people that's doing things. You are a lawyer, you know the same happens in law school, right? So it literally, when that type of thing, it's like the government has not issued standards to which things have to be successful. If that's the case, every gym in America would be shut down. Because how many of us have gym memberships and our bodies still look like 2011 bodies and it's 2021, you know? There is something where there's no standard for how successful it will be. And especially when it comes to business, you could make the argument only the top 5%, even really 10% make it, and the top 5% truly shine. So like, what do you guys want? If we were
Mhm.
selling, and I would, as a defense attorney, make this argument, we're not selling dreams. There's no company on this earth, and a reasonable person under the circumstances would not believe that if you paid for this for maybe 500, it's going to make you a millionaire. Because if that's the case, everybody would be a millionaire. What about that defense?
Well, the problem is, while there is no standard for what makes people successful, she said, just like the Susus, I was thinking of that as well.
Mm.
While there is no standard for what it makes people successful, other than perhaps an objective standard at that particular workplace, the
Mm-mm.
difference is, and this is where the law comes in, there are standards for what qualifies as fraud, and there are standards for what qualifies as telemarketing fraud in terms of what is considered a fraudulent scheme. There's
Okay.
a couple of issues. Number one, with the MLM thing, is that, and that's why I said that's a shaky defense, is because this wasn't necessarily sold as an MLM in terms of those people bringing in other people. It was supposed to be an independent business website that they set up and then start being able to operate this business
Okay.
themselves. So the standard where, and this comes in on the criminal side more so than on the civil side, where it's just, well, was it negligent, etc. When you're on the criminal side, one of the things that is always underlying it, even though there's different ways that you get to it, is knowledge and motive. And what it really comes down to is, did these individuals know and deliberately go into this selling people something that they knew was garbage? And that is where that comes in. So yes, while there may be 5% or 5 people out of whatever that make money, if you know that what you have put together has a far greater chance of failure than success, because it was never meant to succeed, it was only meant for you to continue to generate money, then that, of course, will cover the government on that piece for motive instead of fraud. And that's what they're arguing here, that this is a situation where, of course, a couple of people might get some money, but ultimately, if it is put in place, if it's something where you know going in that that's really not going to happen, then it's a fraudulent scheme. And the best thing I could make this akin to is Bernie Madoff with Ponzi schemes, because there
Mm.
are some people who invested with him. Now, although unknowingly, and these people were unknowing as well, who did get a return because he was making sure that he funneled some money to them so that they would get a return. But
Mm-hmm.
what they didn't know is that more money was being taken from other people to pay them back. So what would he say? Well, some people did get a return. Yeah, but
Okay,
you also know that you set that up for
but
yourself. Now, I'm not
Almost
saying it's
had me,
exactly
Johnda. In
no, I'm not
Roderick's
saying it's
words,
exactly the same. It's not. I'm simply
at
saying
all.
yeah, no, it's not the same. What I'm simply saying is that there are situations where even the fraudster makes sure that they are covered when it relates to some people getting a return.
And this is a good point, but to Jen Shah's defense, in this case, they couldn't have used a Ponzi scheme like Birdie. They
Well,
did
no,
not
no, 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 no.
invest in people to make sure that some people won and other people lost. So in this case, it really was somebody's hard work, their gumption. Now, here's the thing, you guys. I'm not saying that what Jen Shah did wasn't horrible. I am saying that it seems to me to be on the legal side of horrible, which is still horrible, but you're not going to
Yeah.
jail for it, right? But to Jen Shah's point, if they can prove these people, right? And they're saying that the government actually misrepresented, because, okay, let's get into this. Let me pull it back a second. They're
Hmm.
also requesting the grand jury minutes. For those of you guys don't know, when you go in front of a grand jury, it is the worst. You never want to face a grand jury because they can literally sit there and be like, well, I heard this and that. They don't have to bring any proof. That doesn't have to be reasonable. They just have to get a few people saying, well, I heard Johnda was working for like the Noriega cartel, right? And if the jury finds me believable, then they will haul Johnda into court for charges of working with the cartel, right? It seems ridiculous, but this is what the grand jury. You don't have to defend. There's no rebuttal. It's just saying to your peers, does this seem plausible? If it's plausible, they haul you in and you literally have to defend yourself. Jen Shah is actually saying that, and this is what I think the judge probably ruled on, that they wanted fruits of a spoiled tree. They wanted some of this thrown out because they're saying that the police involved or the investigators involved actually concealed certain things. For one, that she wasn't involved in some businesses. For two, that they did kind of like misrepresented why they got search warrants for her emails, for a phone number attached to her, and for all these things, they misrepresented it. And because it was misrepresented, this should be thrown out. Part of the misrepresentation, it appears that they're claiming, is you guys did not let people of the grand jury or even the judge, when he was issuing the search warrant, know some people actually, with their own blood, sweat, and tears, made it big off of the information or was successful. I don't know how
Yeah, I
big
was
is.
going to say nobody made it big from this mess.
Okay, so successful, but it meets the burden
They
of,
made a couple of dollars. Yeah.
yes, you made money, which is all that they were not guaranteeing, but is all that it implied they can do. Now, the judge, I believe, ruled in this because this is what I think the judge ruled on. The judge said no to that. Why? Because they were literally arguing procedural. Because when they said, listen, you got the search warrant and you got the grand jury indictment by literally leaving out information. And we believe that if the judge had heard this, the search warrant never would have been issued. And if the search warrant had been issued, we wouldn't have gone from the grand jury. And if we hadn't, we wouldn't be here. So throw everything out. This was purely procedural, and by procedural, for you guys that don't know legal jargon, it just means that there was no
They didn't
evidence
connect the
collected.
dots.
Yeah, they didn't connect the dots because, for instance, they did a search warrant, I think, on an email address. Nothing was found at that email address. So you can't suppress any evidence because they weren't able to get any evidence. For that number that was associated with Jen, they didn't find anything there. So there was nothing presented to court. So the judge was like, you guys, I'm not going to throw out a whole case based on this procedural misdoing because I believe that even if they hadn't told me, if they
Yeah.
had told me this and that, I
They
still would
still
have
would have
probably
given it
moved
to me.
forward. Yeah. Now, here's the thing, right? Let's go into the particulars they wanted. I do believe, now, this is a real point of contention. The judge didn't rule on that because what the judge said, they gave Jen Shah more time. For those of you guys that don't know, a lot of the government and a lot of corporations, when they feel like throwing a monkey wrench in justice and being a-holes, is they'll say, where's the evidence? And they will direct you to a giant U-Haul storage facility with papers up to the ceiling and say, have at it, right? And you're just
But
like,
in a
there's,
criminal case, you want it. You
well, you
want it.
want
You
it.
never know what's gonna be there. You want it. Oh, it's gonna be a nightmare,
True.
but you want it.
But here's
And
the thing.
yeah,
When you want it, though, and this goes into Jen's thing, when you're not giving me particulars, which is what exactly I am being charged with. Like their particulars they wanted was, let's see, what sales floor, what floors were these sales offices located at? What fulfillment centers were things shipped out of? What accounts are you alleging I laundered money through? And
Mhm.
give me the exact time frame this has happened. Because when you tell me a decade and you point me to like a public storage warehouse, I'm searching through stuff. And at the end of the day, it's like I don't really know what I'm defending against. So everything's important. Can't throw anything away. You don't want to admit to something that they might not be onto. And this goes into what Johnda was saying about the government having not only unlimited financial resources, but the best of the resources. So that's kind of like a way they can wear you down, where you're looking at all these legal bills and you're like, girl, just plead out. Like, just plead out because we're going to go
Yeah.
bankrupt. At least if you go to jail, we'll still have our money and we can maybe enjoy it when we get out, but we'll go bankrupt if we keep doing this. Now, what do you think about not what the judge ruled? I understand with the suppression and fruits of a spoiled tree, since it was purely procedural, I can see how the judge was like, "Meh." But what do you think about these particulars that she's alleging they just didn't give her?
Well, the judge did rule with that because they did provide that information in a subsequent in a subsequent indictment, well, basically updating it with more information. Because as I mentioned, I love this learning, yeah. um, because as more information came in, because as I mentioned in 2019, her indictment pretty much looked like that group of people.
Okay.
So if they had indicted, hell, you or I, of something a couple of years ago related to other people, and they only had the information specific to that group,
Hmm.
then our stuff is going to be kind of general along with that group, which is why, as we mentioned earlier, they put a seal on her and Stewart and held on to it for another 2 years, which is a whole other issue we'll get into later. But so part of, yeah, because that brings into, you were doing this show and yeah,
Yeah.
there's some stuff we got to talk about. But at any rate, but at any rate, what the judge provided, or what the judge ruled on in terms of not dismissing anything, and what the government ultimately provided later, and you and I exchanged this information, is this is where they got into the more specific, because you're right, what's a sales floor? I never went to Manhattan. I went to Manhattan with Mary, and she doesn't like black people in 7-Elevens, but I don't know. Remember she said they went to New York, but I didn't go to
I
any
know what
7-Eleven.
Mary's talking about. If anybody's ever pulled up to a 7-Eleven for gas at 3 in the morning,
Oh yeah,
it
I mean,
her only
that was a
problem was
whole mess.
saying black people, because anyone, you're a fool if you get out the car at 3 in the morning at a 7-Eleven in a neighborhood you don't know.
Exactly.
You're just a fool and a sham, a fool and a sham.
So, but the point is, absolutely. What are you talking about? I'm this fabulous housewife. I don't go to sales floors unless it's Neiman's. What are you talking about? So that's where we get this information now. As I know, they aren't talking about that stuff as it relates to Jen and Stu Chains. They're only uh, honing in, and so now that helps her team hone in, which is a good thing.
Yes.
They're only honing in on this whole issue of gathering and selling these names, because that is when you get into what was my alleged, nobody's been convicted,
Yes.
specific role in this scheme that you claim I was a part of. Because you're talking all this nonsense. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't defend a bunch of nonsense. What did I do so I could tell you I didn't do it? So
Yeah.
that's why they are now saying that it was about the names. Now the problem for Jen is, and this is not necessarily about the particulars, but this is just a general problem,
Hmm.
is that as far as the government is concerned, and that's where we get into this whole tiers thing, is that the individuals who provided the names, when they look at the whole scheme and they're determining who are the greater actors, who are the middlemen, who are just the foot soldiers. They have determined that the greatest actors, which is not just Jen and Stu, as we know, are the ones who provided the names, because you providing the names then gives them people to call, which, or the names and addresses, which then gives them people to call, and so on and so forth. And then of course you have the, I guess, the lowest level of the people who continue to make the calls to keep charging people's credit cards. So yes, now she knows what they're alleging, what they're accusing her of, but unfortunately, what they're accusing her of has
Hmm.
also been predetermined, and not because of Jen Shah, because as we've seen, other individuals in that category have already pled and been sentenced or found guilty, whatever, however they decided to go about their cases. But she's not the only one, but that is determined to be the most egregious actors in this. And again, egregious is all relative, because we're dealing with white collar crimes as opposed to drug dealing, rape, murder, all of that kind of stuff.
True.
I'm sorry, I know we shouldn't say that stuff on YouTube. Okay.
So yes, let's not say those words, but
Yeah.
I
Sorry.
will say that, and this is my problem when it comes to federal charges. Oftentimes the people that do the most egregious things get
Mhm.
away with it. You cannot expect this. First of all, these names in the list, Jen Shaw's arguing they were recirculated, right? So
Mhm.
they're getting names from other people. They're doing it. It's a
Absolutely.
mine. It's always mining. But for the government to suggest that the most egregious are the people that gave the names, not the people that had the call centers, not the people that harassed old people, because I do remember from reading the things, not only did they sell them stuff, right?
Oh, it was
But
constant.
they made them overextend themselves knowingly, and then they would have debt
Absolutely.
collectors come and harass them even more. They were just
And
leeching
even
money.
for some of them, let's not forget, this part just broke my heart. I know you read this part. For some of them, they even provided people to help them get more credit cards so
They
that they
did.
could. I mean, it was horrible.
This is true, but when you say they, the government rolled back the charges on Jen Shaw once she was like, show me what I'm guilty of. And now the government is trying to make us believe that the most egregious thing in all these her atrocities are the people that gave a name. Really? So when Jen gave me that list, I would have set up shop and started mining and taking advantage of elders. I mean, again, I understand that most of the
And
top
remember,
people,
it's not just Jen though.
it's not just Jen, but we're
Yeah.
talking about this through the lens of Jen. Now, here's one snag that the government hit that I think they are going to have to answer in court,
Hmm.
and it will go far to knock her like her jail time, if any, down, right? And I think part of the reason, it's just my opinion, they expected Jen to roll over like everyone else, but for whatever reason, Jen saved some money for a lawyer, and maybe she's like,
Actually, she didn't. She had the big money lawyers that filed all
yes,
those cool motions that you and I read. Yeah,
yeah.
they're gone.
Oh, okay. So they're gone, right? I did see that
Mm,
GoFundMe. We'll talk
yeah,
about that a little later.
yeah,
But
they're gone. She's down to one chick.
okay, well, that's fine. Listen, never
I
underestimate the
mean,
power
she
of
might be a
woman.
bad chick. I think her bad.
Exactly. Let's hope. Fingers crossed, Jen. But they said that the defense counsel, this is when the big money lawyers were on it, exhibit 10 in the org chart, right? Um, they said that when they got the arrest warrant, and even in the court filing, they said that Stu and Jen were the mastermind. In that org chart,
Or
Stu
part of the
and Jen,
mastermind group. Yeah,
well, true. But
yeah,
more to importantly, Stu James and Jen Shaw are listed as VP, right?
yeah.
But when they got the search warrant, they said Jen was at the top when she was always at VP. And she can show that some of the VP stuff, it was literally arm's distance, right? There's also Thrive and there was Red Seal, right?
Hmm.
These are two companies that Jen was listed as at the top. Jen's lawyers have actually, and again, the judge didn't allow it to be dismissed, but he didn't say that this is ridiculous. So they're probably going to put it in court.
I'm sure
Jen,
they're gonna bring it up. It's. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
it's.
but
Yeah.
Jen and them have evidence that she wasn't even involved in those companies, in Thrive or Red Seal at all. Not on the org chart, not involved. And I believe Stu was secretly taped. right?
Mhm.
Describing the organization. And I think they asked him, was Jen involved? And he was like, no, Jen Shah's not involved. He didn't even know he was being taped. And this was like on a sting operation. So it's not even like he knew he was in trouble at that time.
This is the thing with that, though. Well, there's a couple of things. One, I think because they have uh, narrowed their role in which you have to do anyway in order to make any case, you got to be specific.
Mhm.
So when they narrow their role, I'll remember that question in a second. When they narrowed their role, they made it clear, which helps the prosecution, that whether or not she was a specific officer or employee of any of those organizations or any of those companies, that is going to help the prosecution, because it really doesn't matter who you were connected with, because for the role that she is alleged to have, that she's alleged to have, I don't give a damn. If I have the role
True.
of selling the names, it doesn't matter what the alleged companies are that the sales floor that the sales floor is providing. You know what I mean?
Do you
So
Do you honestly think, though, and this is just for you being a criminal
yeah,
attorney, when the government starts using words like you were the most egregious actor, right? It sounds horrible. Is it a valid defense to say I was not the most egregious actor? There were worse actors. If you are going to
no.
sentence me and maybe I'm guilty of it, come on. Like, I didn't really do that much.
No, it's more so hyperbole. I mean, I
Yeah.
have clients all the time, especially even on the lowest level, who is, especially when you have just regular folks who are like, "Why am I charged with beating up so and so? So and so slapped her in the face too." I mean, because no, I'm serious. I really get those people. So,
Valid argument. Go on.
well, it
It's
is,
a
but then
bravo
I'm like,
argument.
so what am I supposed to? And I usually have to say to my clients, so I'm supposed to walk in and say, my client's not as guilty for the laundry room beatdown
Yes.
because somebody else slapped him in the face too.
Okay.
You
But
still
how
were
about
involved in the laundry room beatdown, damn it.
all right, okay, Shonda, that's very compelling. Jonda, sorry, that's very. I'm like Shonda Rhimes. Woo, how to get away with murder. But listen, so Jonda, that's actually super compelling. But what about this? What if we're in conspiracy and people are buried under the Hudson River, right? And they
Well,
say the most egregious actor, right, was
yeah,
Tisa who drove the Uber car to the Hudson. And I'm like, Your Honor, yes, I drove the Uber car, and yes, I knew what was in the trunk. But Jonda actually off film in the Italian restaurant, and Shonda actually buried them in a husband. So yes, I know I played a part, but Your Honor.
well, that comes in during sentencing. Seriously,
Okay.
like the fact that you were involved in the scheme, those are the issues for the trier of fact in terms of the guilty or not guilty phase. Your level of involvement is where we get into. So I know we're joking around. And I don't want people, because I always love an opportunity to have fun and to educate. I don't want anybody walking away saying, well, I heard this lady on the internet that says it it doesn't matter if if my actions were lesser. Yes, it does matter if your actions were lesser. Unfortunately, depending on the charges, it will not, or it may not matter as it relates to the guilty or not guilty phase. But you damn sure better have an attorney like me who is willing to stand on their head if they need to make clear to the court that you may have driven the car, but you did not dig any ditches and put a pickaxe in anybody's face. Absolutely. So I mean, and I have had to make those arguments in real life about individuals. Just a quick example: an individual who was charged with statutory assault. You can fill in the blanks. And there's really, unfortunately, the reason why it's called statutory is because it is per your status. People think it's about statutory because of statute. No, it's about status, as in how old were you, how old were they, and did the event happen? That's it. Who lied, what they look like, none of that matters. However, so you're going to be convicted. However, once we get to the sentencing phase, and in my state, thank God, we have what's called bifurcated sentencing. So it's totally separate hearing. When we
Hmm.
get to the sentencing, then I will say, okay, you found the guilty. There was nothing I could do about that. But they lied. They had a big booty. They, all of that. Because it is important for the court to hear that. And that's important for Jen too. No matter, let's say they agree. I'm not saying she will, but let's, just say, for instance, and I know we got other stuff to cover, but just in case we, just for argument's sake, she and her counsel make some kind of an agreement to plead to one or more of these offenses. When it's sentencing time, absolutely she's gonna go in there. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I've had all of these horrible things happen to me. It was never my intent to hurt old people. I got old
Hmm.
parents, I've never done anything wrong. She hasn't. She's never been convicted of any, in the eyes of the law. She's never
True.
been convicted of anything. So I was just handing people names. I didn't make phone calls and max
Nope.
out old people's credit cards and all of that. Those are great defenses, but they're going to come more into play from the sentencing standpoint if the court feels that the mere fact that she provided the names is enough for criminal liability.
So I want to ask you two questions to kind of like wrap this up, right?
Mhm.
The first, when I read through the papers, and this is even in the government's answer, did you think the government made a compelling nexus between her selling the names and knowing everything those names were going to be used for? Because I didn't.
I think that there is a lot of information that I'm looking forward to,
Yes.
the next couple of hearings and reading transcripts to find out. Because as we know, we're never going to see every single thing on paper. So on paper, I agree with you. I didn't find that. I think that what they did was say this led to this for the scheme. And maybe it's just because of a hazard of the job, of course. I know that once you're inside the courtroom or once you're there, and then remember, there's a lot of informants involved here. So that gets really tricky in terms of
Mm,
what is going to be put in indictments, what's sealed. Even if you go on Pacer, there may be certain things that you may not be able to click on because of
yes.
names. So there is, and all the talking that goes on as well. So I think that there is a lot of meetings that are taking place, and a lot of stuff that we just can't see, because a judge is certainly going to want to know that kind of stuff. Like you mentioned earlier, that was some great stuff you were talking about as it relates to issuing warrants. While it may not all be written down, you can best believe that those things were discussed. Well, we were doing COVID, so I guess maybe on the phone, all
Yes.
the hearings with the judge. I'm sure that if a judge had some concerns, those questions were asked. But I think that we also have to bear in mind the fact that there are some informants, one of whom I'm wondering, with a twinkle in my eye, if one of them is Stew Chains, because remember that memo that I sent you? I was
Yes.
like, ooh, that did not look so good. So, because for those of you, Tisa is on her game. Just in case you know, your girl is on her game in terms of us being very current and her wanting to know, okay, what is going on right now. So I love that about you. Um, And in August, the case got continued, not because of anything bad anybody did. This was actually the judge. The judge continued the case because, it's gonna especially if you have someone who, at least right now, because people will say they want a trial, and then literally
Mhm.
before there's no trial, but you certainly have that right. And at least right now,
And the
Jen.
evidence. He also
Oh,
continued because they argued we have too much evidence to look through in this short amount of
oh,
time.
absolutely. And so you have that. But anyway, one of the main things is, if this goes to trial, it's not going to be quick. No, it may not be like R. Kelly going on for a month, but
Yes.
it's going to be a couple of weeks, and everything is backed up because of the vid. So the judge said, I don't care what you do. But there's no way we're going to do this in October, and everybody's complaining, and why wait to October? So they had a court date to continue the case, and Stu Chains, through his attorney, sent a document to the court saying, can we be excused from the
Mm,
court date? We're not asking for a continuance because my client is close to an agreement on this case. Now, if I were the person who was arrested alongside Stu Chains, and our fortunes are pretty much tied together because we're considered to be the ones who were running the Utah version of the scam,
mhm.
I would be mighty concerned if my homeboy was talking, if my homeboy sent a memo to the court saying, nah, I'm good, I'm working out a plea. I'd be concerned.
Okay, so that's actually a really good point you made. I had a few, like, I have one and two quick questions, right?
Go
So we're going
ahead,
to
I'm
kind of
sorry.
do a lightning round on this to see if
Okay.
we can get through. And well, if you guys let me know in the comments once this airs, this will also be on Just Johnda. Just Johnda, before we go, why don't you? I'll put it in the description box, but why don't you give a shout out to your Facebook, your podcast,
Yes.
your platforms, please?
Okay, so you all can find me on Let's Be Honest with Just Johnda. That is available anywhere where you listen to podcasts. So I'm on Podbean, Google, Amazon, Spotify, Verbal, you name them, you can find me there. If you don't remember that, this is really easy, and I'm sure she's going to put it in the chat. You can follow me on Instagram, and of course, I note all of the episodes there. You can follow me on Instagram at Let's Be Honest JJ. That's LETSBEHONEST JJ for Just Johnda.
Yes. So if you guys are watching playback or if you're watching real time, come back. I'm going to drop all the links in the description box so you
Mhm.
can find Jonda. So Jonda, we have the dry eye defense that Jen used that everybody laughed out of court because of her contact lens solution. But the one thing and I think the feds did that on purpose because again, you guys don't realize with the feds, they do jury tainting a lot. And when people think that you're already on some BS, right? When you get into a jury, they're just like, you're guilty. And what is this I heard about contact lens solution? The other half of that defense that they weren't actually able to kind of make disappear, which I think was kind of valid, was the point that they made false representation. So a lot of you guys that don't know, Jen said that she was driving along. I took notes, right? She was on her way to
Mhm.
filming. She got a call saying she needed to return home. She tried to call her husband. She couldn't get. She got a call from a 917 number, right?
Mhm.
They said they were a detective. She was then asking her where her location was. She told them. She then was pulled over by a police officer, said that they had a warrant for the arrest. Now she admits that they read her the Miranda rights. You guys go and Google Miranda rights. Even if you read over it once, if you ever get in any type of trouble, it could literally save you so many problems. Even when they try to strong arm you and make it feel like you'll look more guilty if you have a lawyer, just make sure you know your Miranda rights and stick to them no matter how many mind games they try to play with you, right? But she did said that when she was arrested, even though that she went to go interrogation and she was handcuffed, they kept telling her, "We're taking you for your safety. We're taking you for your safety." It seems like she's saying that the arresting officers and also by proxy, the U.S. attorneys, they played up the fact that She had a restraining order with a person. She named him, but they blacked it out and just called him individual one. It was redacted. Why? Because this guy is also part of the well, not MLL, also part of this scheme, right? And
Mhm.
he's a pretty high ranking. The thing is, Jen got an order of protection in New York State, right? Why? Because this man beat her in New York City, right? For something dealing with this before they even got caught. She was actually assaulted and violently assaulted on the streets of New York City. She got an order of protection from New York City. When they arrested her, they kept saying, no, this is for your own protection. We're keeping you safe. Stay calm. We're keeping you safe. She went in this because she was trying to establish her freedom of mind. She
Mhm.
thought the one, even though it was odd that she was handcuffed, she thought by the way they were saying it, coupled with the 917, coupled with the statements the arresting officer made and also the U.S. attorney made, I'm sorry, not the U.S. attorney, the detectives on the case made, that maybe this individual one, right, who's also part of this case,
Mhm.
had made false charges against Jen. And that's why she was being arrested. Again, Jen is not, when she gets upset, the most rational person. So
Or articulate.
or articulate, right? She just goes straight id. There's the id, the ego, and the super. She goes straight id, right? So that's Jen. And she also said to further this that person one was actually discussed in the interrogation, which led her to believe, is this about what happened? And she said that while they were questioning her about other stuff, that seemed tertiary, right? Secondary to what was actually happening, which
Mhm.
might have been with this person of interest, person one, that she had a restraining order out. And the arresting officer and detectives were leading her to believe that this had something to do with that. And now I know usually with these type of cases, it doesn't
Uh-huh.
stand in court because the police have made, what am I talking about? They have made a career out of moving around people's Miranda rights. Your job as a citizen is to protect your rights at all costs. Their job is to get around them as much as they can so they can get the information they need. Do you think that will stand up in court, in criminal, or at least somehow come into the sentencing phase?
No, already been struck down. No
Oh,
violation of her Miranda rights. One of the main things when it comes to Miranda is I agree, it is important to know and understand your rights. However, what is also important when people make those make those I just read that. One of the things that's important is that when you make when you make those allegations as it relates to Miranda, if you didn't ultimately give any information that would be detrimental to you, it's really not going to matter. You know what I mean? Because when
true.
you want something suppressed, if I'm arguing to suppress something, I actually need something that I want suppressed. If she never ultimately said anything that was related to her case, then it's really not going to matter. You want a motion to suppress nothing.
Yes.
So even if the circumstances were kind of jacked up, if ultimately she kept her mouth closed, then fine. She may have been scared. She may have been aggravated. Whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter as long as she ultimately didn't say anything. Another issue with Jen that I think a lot of people don't really know, or it easily, for those of us who do know, it gets a little easy to forget because her husband isn't always around, especially during this situation. And we know because it doesn't look good for his job. First of all, the thing we do know about Jen is Jen lies. Okay, we've seen that on the show. Um, Secondly, she is also, well, there's three things. First, Jen lies. Secondly, so write this down, people. Secondly, Coach Sharif Shah is an attorney. She is married to an attorney. He just doesn't practice. He was an attorney up until about 10 years ago.
But that
These
doesn't
are
mean
not
anything in the
stupid
court.
people. I'm not saying it doesn't
No.
mean anything in the court. I'm talking about us having a conversation about what people's understanding is of what they may or may not have understood. So in court, that's you're on your own. Okay, that's between you and the trier of fact, whether it's judge or jury. The third thing, and this also comes into this also makes a difference to me, is that especially when we talk about, oh, I'm so confused and all of this, from a chronology standpoint, the first domino in this case, at least some of the people who are listed at the top, and that's why their indictments were merged with hers once her indictment was opened.
Mhm.
Um, they were indicted in 2017.
Okay.
So their case was already going through. That's the person on there whose name is Mr. Unpronounceable. I can't figure out how to pronounce his name. Okay.
Two chains. Oh, no.
We're gonna call him Stu Chains 2. And
Exactly.
or maybe we should call him Stu Chains 1 since he went down first. The second domino, and this to me is an important one just for a broader discussion about this, is the sales floors were raided in uh, February of 2019. And ultimately, the individuals in charge of those were indicted in November 19, which is also when Stu and Jen's indictments were put in place but sealed. If
Mhm.
I am providing you with information, and I also looked at this in terms of her indictment, so it was really cool to connect the dots. If I am providing you with information and you're shut down in you're shut down in February 2019, then I know something went down. And you can't tell me that nobody told her, girl, we got raided, lay low. So I say that because since February 19, and then this is just a personal thing, I'm amazed and impressed that she has been able to operate, and maybe that's the real reason why she has always been on the cutting razor sharp edge of nuts, is because she has been carrying, think about the stress of carrying around since February of 2019, that at any time an anvil could come falling on your head because people you were dealing with were raided and indicted by the feds. And this is like at the tail end of them finishing shooting the show. And then, season one, it's being promoted and all of that. That could have somebody acting an ass. And I could totally buy that. So I think the timeline of it, when you also tie it together in terms of what she's claiming she didn't know, is
Mhm.
very interesting, because when you look at her indictment, her alleged stoppage of the providing the names stopped in 2019, even though the money laundering allegedly went into 2020, which would kind of make sense, because then at that point it's not about them giving you money, it's about you trying to move some of the money around.
Okay.
So I just thought from a date standpoint that was something that was important to point out, especially when we jump ahead into this whole defense of, I'm so confused as to why I'm here.
Definitely, I can see that. Hold on, did I lose you? I
No, I'm
can't
here.
hear. Okay. Okay, so but
I was
here's
making
another
sure I
thing.
didn't hit anything, but I don't think I did. Okay.
No, 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 that was my fault. So here's another thing that I actually want to ask you, and this will be the last question of the evening,
Okay.
right? Let's speak in code for the
I
algorithm.
gotcha.
I'm just a young, humble station, trying to make sure these things get played, right? Um,
I know I've been a
Jen
criminal attorney
Shah,
too long, and I got to remind myself
yes,
sometimes.
Jen Shah is not the predominant religion in Salt Lake City, and she is part of a marginalized religious group. Her husband is African American,
And also a
and
part of that marginalized religious
yeah,
group. So he's double whammy.
yes, the feds. are notoriously right wing. A lot of them are supported our last president openly and
Mhm.
loudly. The U.S. Attorney's Office, also predominantly right wing, and they
Well,
have
that
their
Southern
beliefs.
District of New York is kinda after that person right now, so that
Well,
particular office is a
but
little different, but yeah.
true. But if
But
they
I
don't
get
do it
you. Very
openly,
conservative, generally speaking,
generally, and
and
very, very
draconian from a sentencing standpoint, which is why you don't wanna go to federal court.
exactly. Even though technically, if you get sentenced, you want to be in a federal prison as opposed to
Well,
state.
white collar,
So,
though.
well, white
I
collar.
mean, yeah.
Yes, yes. You got.
If
First
you
of all,
don't
you don't
wanna
want to be
go
in any
to a
prison.
federal supermax, God help you.
Yeah. Let me shut up before y'all be like, but y'all told me no. To your point, right? And I'm
No,
like, I did
handcuff
not.
cases gotta be Jen Shah type charges.
Yeah.
You wanna roll up like Nino Brown,
Yes.
your butt's going to supermax. Let's be clear.
Exactly. So you don't want to be the supermax, but you do want to be in club fed. But the sentences are a little harsher than
And you
state
get to
court.
wear cute little outfits, and they got tennis
True.
courts. No, that itch is real.
Do you think no, but do you think that that played a role in the way they tried to publicly humiliate her, the way they are showing no mercy, and the way some people could say maybe we'll do this on a different podcast, or maybe we'll do a recap, and when we actually get into it, um, you can join the panel, give us a breakdown about
Mhm.
how it's lies, how this, how that.
Yeah.
But do you think, I mean, because if you think about it, Whitney should also be facing, in my opinion, federal charges if what
I
Jen
am
did.
so excited to be digging into that because that's a little bit new. So I'm still, I don't want to speak out of school on that one, but interesting case. Um,
But do you think
I,
that Jen's makeup and all the things that make her who she is played potentially played, and I'm not saying there's a defense to this because oftentimes there's not, but do you think it potentially played a role in everything that's going on?
Interestingly enough, I think that with Jen's and again speaking in code, I think in Jen's case, despite the obvious other issues, and you and I right here on all of them, unfortunately, what is probably playing most against her is her position, her sort of suppose, because we know she doesn't have what she flaunts, right? But suppose, yeah, I mean, but do any of them really? But her alleged social class, the way that not only is she a part of that alleged social class, but extra over the top in terms of the flossy nature of it. So unfortunately, Jen Shaw is getting a little bit of an extra like against her, but unlike what, let's call a spade, what would be the normal reasons why she would
Mm,
catch a little bit of extra heck, it is really because of the status she is attempting to portray and because of what they believe about her. And this really, it's great because it brings us full circle, goes
mhm.
back to that quote that I read in the very beginning from that statement from the Department of Justice, which is that we believe this person not only is a, in their words, not mine, that this person's a dirty rotten thief, and on top of being a dirty rotten thief, she did it on the backs of the most vulnerable of our society. And to make matters worse, or as we say, to add insult to injury, she isn't even doing it quietly. She is literally dancing on their heads in, you know, stilettos and fur coats. So I think that that is really what is hurting her in all of this. So it is her status is just not the usual status. So I am 100% with you. I just think it's more about the green than the other.
I agree with you completely. That's a great way to put it. It's more about the green than the other. Again, Just Johnda, or new Shonda Rhimes. Thank you so much for joining us. You did a great job of breaking it down, especially from a criminal attorney's standpoint. You brought a lot of insight and really helped us understand what's going on. I will make no secret. I think the feds are just fedding once again. This is
Of
just
course. I
what
mean,
they
it
do. They
feds don't
over-exaggerate.
fail.
Yeah, I could literally be like, Johnda, like, do you want to go get a 7 Up? And I'll be like, Tisa conspired to the thing, the most egregious soda ever. She could have gotten Coke Zero, but she got regular 7 Up. And you're just like, really, guys? Like, the feds are always fedding, right? They keep us safe. I'm not taking anything away from law enforcement, but sometimes it's just sickening. And I'm just looking at them like, y'all stop it, right? They are the original drama queens. I wish Jen Shah luck in the fact that I hope that she is not guilty of these crimes to a certain extent that take her away from her children and her family. I wish that for everyone. I do find it odd that in the court system,
Mhm.
um, Tom Girardi is busy writing his medical notes in crayon, saying
You
he was
better stop.
evaluated. I
Because
listen.
I'm with you 100%. I have seen many attorneys, and not just on the specials on Hulu, which was great though, Hustler and
Yes,
Housewife, but also on other things, and just on threads other attorneys have talked on, like offline, where this dude was still negotiating cases, he was still giving speeches and
the
what have you
evidence,
in
the
August and
voicemails.
September.
Listen,
Then
the
all of a sudden in
voicemails.
October,
No, listen,
no.
the voicemails that were attached in evidence, appendices, ABC, the voicemails had
Yes.
him up to a month before lying, like being so nimble. And it's just like, stop it. And now, like you said, where am I? What's going on? It's just like, stop it.
And most of us have had, I don't want to speak for you, but at least myself and most people I know have been touched in some way by some family member, friend, maybe even a parent or a grandparent with Alzheimer's or dementia. It is disgusting for
Yeah.
people to tease about it, but it's also disgusting for people to play with it. That is not cool,
And lots of
for
people,
somebody to use it to their personal advantage.
and
Not cool, Mr. Girardi.
we are not saying that he is. I will eat crow. We
But if
find
he
out from an
is, not cool.
independent medical specialist who is not certified by the state of California. I don't want anybody with the State Bar Association coming near this. But if he is, we do. But I will say that literally now Alzheimer's dementia is the new get out of free card of the wealthy elite. Just like learning disabilities, when you are poor, is frowned upon and you're kicked to the side. Those same people, when you have means, get that label on their children so they can get extra time, get this,
Hello,
get that,
Operation
and get
Varsity
scholarships to
Blues.
colleges. So again, it's a horrible, ugly thing. And you can say we're being cynical, but it happens all the time. Look at Bill Cosby, look at Harvey Weinstein, look at literally
And
being
let's
mentally fragile is the new mental disability, you
and
know?
the bar is these same lawyers who are talking behind closed doors.
Mhm.
Nobody's going to come out and say it, and certainly the bar is not going to say anything, because as far as I'm concerned, the California bar really needs to give itself a good hard look, especially given that there were hundreds of complaints filed
Mhm.
against this man over the past even 15 years, let alone 30. And a complaint after complaint was dismissed. There was no interruption in his license, no suspensions, no nothing. So, how does that happen? Well, when you go to lunch with the right people, when the certain people get to use your box at the Lakers games. So, let's just talk about what's really going on here. But I know that that goes down a rabbit hole, and we'll leave
No,
that.
but you know what? We'll talk about on a
Yeah,
different thing because it's something that needs to be talked about. I think people
it's
believe that the
privilege.
justice system will give you justice. It will, but justice is not always fairness because it has to be something pure going in the system to get something pure out. when the system is tainted and you put in spoiled meat, no matter how good you cook the hamburger is going to be made out of
Yeah.
spoiled meat. So I think this is a very valid thing to bring up,
Uh-huh.
but we will talk about it at
Yep.
a different time. I thoroughly enjoyed having you on. You guys, I just have to let you know
I
we are,
loved being here.
oh, thank you. We are going to do something on Mary Crosby
Ooh.
tomorrow. I'm going to post about it early so you guys have a chance to join the chance. Also, Johnda is going to link her Facebook group so we can just get it going and go. You can also check this out on her Facebook channel, but it's going to be great, you guys. So make sure that you join us. And again, Johnda, thank you so much. You guys,
You're
I
welcome.
subscribe to her podcast. I'm not on Facebook.
Mhm.
In case you guys are wondering why I never accepted your friend's request, I'm not on Facebook. It's just I just set it up so nobody else could take the name.
Gotta do it.
Yes, I'm not on Facebook, but I am subscribed to your podcast. I find it thoroughly
Thank
enjoyable.
you.
And also, you guys, next time, because I'm running a little bit late, next time when we do the Mary Crosby, which is super entertaining and it is so
Mhm.
silly,
Yeah.
we're going to do it tomorrow at
Not as
5 p.m.
quite legally, but there's some good legal
There's a
juice
lot
there
of good
too.
things.
But
We're going to
you're
do it.
probably gonna get more of us acting a fool on it.
But with the Mary Crosby, we'll take questions on what's happening with Jen Shah to get her opinion. And also with Mary Crosby, you can get her opinion. Again, she is not giving legal advice. She is not legal counsel. This is not an attorney-client relationship at all. It is just purely for entertainment purposes. And she's just speaking in hypotheticals. As we know, hypotheticals are neither right nor wrong. They just are. Okay? So welcome to the land of just are. All right. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you, I guess, tomorrow. At the very least, we'll see you
Yes.
soon. All right. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Shonda. All right.
Okay.
Have a good one. Bye bye. Let's see.